Hey everyone, we are live from Central Park, and and it's a very special day simply because this is the very first time that we're doing a conversation with in person. And again, if you don't know, my name is Ishit Chauhan. I was a general surgery prelim at University of Miami Jackson Memorial Hospital, and now I'm doing research at Columbia University in New York. I have a very special guest with me, and that is Dr. Ishwari.
Hello.
She is a second-year resident at Brooklyn Hospital, and we're ready to begin the show and hear about her. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Ishwari.
Okay, so I am from India. I graduated from a med school in China, and during my med school, like from the start, I was aiming for internal medicine. It was something that I really liked, and then once I started my clinical years, that sort of solidified my interest here. And it was always an aim to do residency in the US, so that's how like things somehow worked out. And then I also am like a part-time YouTuber, and I also have like a little blog on my Instagram as well.
Nice. So you did your schooling in China. Your schooling in India, and then subsequently went to China.
Right, that's
similar
right.
to what I did.
Yep.
Where did you go for med school?
So I went to med school at Zhejiang University. It's one of the universities in Hangzhou. It's like a city next to Shanghai. So yeah, it was pretty interesting, honestly.
How was the whole experience?
It was pretty unique because like you go there, you don't know the language. Food, I'm a vegetarian, so that was a challenge too. Everything was like super new. But it was nice because like you're stepping out of your comfort from India and you're trying these new things. I feel like that's where all the growth is. So
Right.
it's pretty cool.
I completely agree with that. Like
Yeah.
when you're, especially when you're, outside your comfort zone, when you're experiencing new things and everything, it's a very nice experience. First of all, it can be challenging. Obviously, comes with its own set of challenges.
True.
But more importantly, like if you know what you want to do, if you know what pathway you want to take, I think it's a very good option for people who
That's true.
who want to pursue this pathway.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and I also feel like a lot of people kind of discriminate, at least in India, for people who graduate from abroad. But what they don't realize is that it's such a huge strength because you know a new language. Like it's all like appreciated so much here. Like even when I do my residency, they always think like it's really cool that you did med school in China. So.
Yeah.
If you've ever felt like insecure about it, like you should take ownership of it because it's a very unique experience and it's a huge strength. Yeah, and I'm sure you must have felt that way too.
I agree. A lot of people ask me about that, like the
Yeah.
fact that I did my. You just ran past. But yeah, a lot of people ask
Yeah.
about that, and like it makes for a good story as well. So you said that you had an idea that you wanted to come to the U.S.
Yeah.
When you were in your medical school, at what point in time did you decide that okay, all right, let me prepare for my steps, let me do the things that I need to do in order to match into residency?
So for me, year one was pre-medical for me. So at that time, I didn't really start my prep or anything. But then the moment I joined med school, I knew that this is what I wanted to do eventually. But I didn't really have proper guidance or like a proper timeline. But I knew that I wanted to be done with steps before I graduated. So that was
Nice.
like a rough target for me. So then later, once after year one, when year two started, that's when like my actual medical subject started. That's when I started studying for that's when I started studying for steps, and then
There's a whole dog race going
I
on over
know.
here. But nice. So when did you take your step one?
So I took step one in 2019. That was like around the start of year 5. My course was like for 6 years. So
Right.
around start of year 5, yeah. That's when
Nice.
I took step one, and step 2 was in year 6. So
Okay. Did you do any rotations before that? Like, no.
I did not. I'd originally planned to do everything in 2020, but then COVID happened, so
Right.
nothing worked out.
Okay. So in year 5, you took your step one. How was your step one experience?
So step one, again, like it was really scary for me because like this is the first time I was doing like such a long exam, and this is like pretty life changing, right? Because like that score just stays with you. So
Right.
and I didn't have like a center in my city, so I had to like travel to another city. But then
Oh.
I was lucky enough to have like two of my friends accompany me. Then we went together, and yeah, we stayed there for like 3 days, and then they were with me throughout the exam. It was stressful.
Where did you take it? Shanghai?
I took it in Beijing.
Oh,
Yep,
interesting.
yep. So it also was like a mini trip for me to just go travel and stuff. But yeah, it was pretty fun because even like when we were traveling and going to all these touristy places, they were just like asking me questions from my flashcards. So it was pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you do anything different, I would say, or anything special in terms of your step one prep?
I honestly don't know. A lot of my step one prep was like trial and error because I didn't have like a definitive way to see what would work for me, and I didn't really have like a lot of seniors who took the steps because so that like I didn't have like proper guidance. But it was just like there's so many resources available online,
Right.
right? So I was just looking at everything, seeing what worked for me, and then it just.
How long did you prepare for step one?
So I started preparing in second year, so it
Oh,
just
wow.
started. Yeah, so all of my subjects I tried to do it simultaneously. So when uni was teaching me about biochem, I tried to do USMLE biochem. So that
Right.
way I tried to balance
So basically,
it.
trying to inculcate that
Yeah.
foundation of,
Yeah,
going along with the coursework.
correct. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good way of going
yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
For me, I think like I took the decision to take the steps or even come to the US a little bit later on.
I see.
And therefore, like again, even though do think that had I been more motivated, I would have probably taken the step one in medical school. But yeah, I took my step one like right at the end of my intern year.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
I was back in India at that
Uh-huh.
point in time. And then I came over to the US and
Right.
did my USC. So, I mean, obviously, like, I think the fact that you can start earlier,
Yeah.
if you see us moving around and stuff, that's
It's
because
dogs.
there's
They're
a
so cute.
there's a bunch of dogs over here. But yeah, like maybe if I had a better perspective, I could have started earlier, and that is something that if people are interested in. If you have a definitive idea,
Yeah.
such as even yours, starting early
Oh,
always
yeah,
helps.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. And then you said you took step 2 in year 6,
Yes.
and so you were doing your internship at that time.
Yes. So again, like internship was not actual internship for me. It was like an online internship, which wasn't even as real because we just had like 3 or 4, hours of like telehealth stuff. It wasn't really proper internship. So that sort of helped because I had sufficient time during intern. Otherwise, it would have been really hard to incorporate that.
And how was your preparation for step 2?
Step 2 was a little more different because I learned a lot from my mistakes for step 1. So I was just like, bro, this is not gonna work. So I started doing UWorld more from the start because for step 1 I started doing UWorld only towards the end, which was like
Oh.
a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just relying on like videos and first aid and stuff. But then it's all about active learning, right? Like you
Right.
gotta like keep solving questions. So I did that for step 2, and I feel like that actually made a difference.
I mean, everyone says UWorld is the
I
gold
know,
standard,
I
and
know, yeah.
that is probably something
Yeah.
I would say everyone stresses. And I think step 1 UWorld, at least when I did it, it does encompass or it does cover everything from like top to bottom.
Yeah.
So it's a very comprehensive
Yeah.
tool to have in your armory. All right, so you said your internship was online. Were you in China at that point in time, or were you
No,
back
I was in India. I came for like winter break, and then I was just stuck there until graduation. So
Wait, so
yeah.
how did the graduation work?
it was just online, dude. It's like one afternoon, you're just like on your Zoom call, and then that's it. You're done with your medical degree. It was crazy. It was such anticlimax because I remember we were like thinking of picking outfits and stuff for graduation. Nothing worked. We were like literally in pajamas, and then we graduated.
That's funny. So obviously, like the fact that you graduated, when COVID was probably at its peak and
Yeah.
everything. So when did you actually apply for residency? And the other thing is, what did you do because you didn't do any electives, so it poses a huge, I would say, setback,
For
wherein
sure.
like you didn't have any US clinical experience. So how did you overcome that challenge?
So obviously it was like a big hurdle for me because like I'd planned everything out before and all of a sudden there's COVID and now nothing's going according to the way you wanted it to. So but I just thought like how can I make the most of the current situation, right? So that's why I just applied for like telemedicine. I was like, there's at least some way to get some sort of experience, right? So we used to work with like doctors remotely for their clinics. So it sort of like, I'm sure it's not as good as in-person ones, but at least like virtually you're getting some experience, and
Right.
that also helps you get like letters of recommendations because that also matters, right? And
Right.
networking is one more thing. It's not as personalized as it would have been if it was in person, but that was still something. So that's how I made up for the US clinical experience. It was not the best, but it's the best I could have done at that point.
Right. I mean,
So,
obviously,
yeah.
that was, I would say, a completely unprecedented
it
situation.
was, yeah.
And yeah, right. You did the best you could have done at that point in time.
Yeah, and even in fact, like I thought it would be looked down upon during interviews, but honestly, they actually said that okay, you went out of your way to do something instead of like not doing
Just
anything.
regressing into a shell.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of this about residency is just that how you project your experiences. You could
Right.
either say it negatively or you could be like,
Right.
this is what I've done. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that probably did
you
make
you
a difference.
actually, like, when it comes to like interviews, when it comes to like even your ERAS application, you have to sell yourself.
For sure, yeah.
And like, if say for example, if you're if you put it in a negative light, it will be
it will
seen
be,
seen
definitely.
in that way.
Definitely.
Conversely, if you say that like these are my holistic experiences, there were drawbacks, but like again, those drawbacks taught me yada yada yada.
Yes.
It gives you that little better light, and how you project yourself
For
is
sure.
something that is very important.
Yeah, and to answer your question about application, like I graduated in July 2021. And I applied immediately after. So
you applied-
I think I got like my medical degree on like 25th July. I applied on 27th. I was so late into the season, but then yeah.
No, but July is
pretty crazy.
fine.
July is still fine, but then I know like people start in June, right? I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
when it
yeah.
So I had to like quickly do everything. And
People,
it was fine.
you like towards the end of June is when you can buy the ERAS
I see.
token.
Yeah, around that time.
And like yeah, but like again, the good thing is that I guess your process was completely streamlined then.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you graduated in July, and then you subsequently applied in September of 2022.
Yep. 21.
Oh, sorry, 21.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was literally the same year. I just did it.
And then you matched in March.
March 22. Yeah.
Right. So, how was your application process? How was the whole experience of actually applying, and how was the interview process?
So for me, like application process, firstly, I was like very overwhelmed by it because I knew you needed like multiple things. You needed like ECFMG certification. Then there was this whole thing about OET that came up. So there was multiple things. So I was just like, if I want to do this, let me just write everything down. So I just like wrote it all down, and I was just like, okay, we're gonna take it one at a time. But then it wasn't like my dad and I, he sat with me throughout the whole thing, and then we just like figured stuff out. So yeah, it was just like to just take it one at a time. Just that helped. And then yeah, it also came to like picking programs and stuff. That was like a whole other thing. So yeah.
The thing that you mentioned about OET, actually, did you take Step to CS? No. Okay.
I don't know ATM. Yeah.
Like the day they announced that Step to CS does not exist anymore, I was like, why?
What's the point?
Yeah.
I know, it was such an expensive exam, right?
It was 1,500,
Yeah.
and like you can only take it in the US, and you can only take it at like 5 places.
Nah.
And like I was like, I could have taken an English exam
I
and
know.
been done with it.
I know. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, like it is what it is. So while you were applying, what was your process of streamlining the programs? How many programs did you apply to?
I applied to like 150 programs. I think 120 to 150 programs. Like I only applied to places where I saw myself be. I know it may like shut your chances down big time, but I was just like, I will not be happy in a place which makes me do like 24-hour shifts and stuff. Like I don't think I would be happy doing that. So I did not apply to those places.
I mean, but
made
like
sure
you still have to do 24
we don't
hours.
do 24 here.
At all?
Nope, we don't.
Not a single 24?
We don't.
What?
Yup. Yeah. So I was very particular about that. That was one thing. Location also mattered to me. Like I don't really have like family ties or anything, but it's more like I preferred being in like a city rather than like in a
Suburban
place that
area
yeah,
or a-
because I knew I wouldn't see myself be that way. But I wouldn't advise this to a lot of people because I know it like narrows your chances down a lot. Like they always say like IMGs you should apply broadly and
But still,
stuff.
120, 150 programs
Yeah.
is still a broad enough
I think it's
application.
but then I was very particular about like not applying to places where I did not see myself being.
Interesting.
So I did that, and then of course like scores were like one of the other filters. I made sure I didn't apply to places that wouldn't filter my application out. So that
Interesting.
would filter it out. So I narrowed it down that way too. And yeah, so ultimately like I used to in fact like go through this whole thing where I used to put stars for each programs and see where I want to be and stuff, but yeah, it was too much. Honestly, if I look back, I feel like it was excessive, but yeah, I just felt like I had that compulsive need of doing it.
But again, like
Yeah.
I also feel that during that time when you submit your application, which at that point in time I think would have been around mid-September, right?
Yep.
Now they've changed it to late September.
Correct,
actually.
yeah.
But like at that point in time, it was mid-September, and like after applying and while you're waiting for the interviews to come in, like especially until unless you have your electives or something while
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah.
that, like you are just waiting for interviews, and
Yeah.
you're essentially killing time, and either you could like do something,
Yeah.
keep yourself occupied, keep yourself
Yeah.
busy, or you could like kill yourself.
I
No, kill yourself with the thought of
I know.
with the thought of like, okay, this person got an interview. Where's my interview?
No. Oh my god, that was a very, very stressful time, honestly. Like because you're not doing anything to
Exact-
solve the situation. You
Right.
only have to wait, right?
It's completely out of your control.
I know, and the most like you can do is like send letters of interest and stuff,
Yeah.
which probably just goes into like junk mail box. I'm so sure.
No, they reply sometimes.
Really, for me, none of them worked. I literally at one point I sent it to like all 150 programs, and I got like nothing back. I was like, okay, this is it.
It might be because it's medicine, and medicine
Probably.
does have like thousands of applicants.
Yeah, yeah.
Which might, but like as far as I'm concerned, like for me, I got an interview for a prelim position
Yeah.
just because I sent a letter of
Oh,
interest.
nice. That's good.
Yeah,
That's nice.
and I've historically also seen like people tell me that they applied, and obviously like it really also depends on how you word the letter of interest.
That's true. I agree.
You
yeah.
have to at least customize it to the place
For
you're
sure,
sending.
yeah.
To the place
Yeah.
you're sending it to. If it's like you can change the name and the whole thing is
Then it's pointless.
then it's pointless. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also I feel like the timing of the letter of interest also matters. If you send it at a time where you think everyone's gonna send it, then it's easy for it to go missed as
Yeah.
well.
And obviously like I would try to like instead of sending it to the program coordinator, I would usually try to like get the email ID of the program director and send it directly to the PD.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Like either if it was on Frida, if I could get the PD's email ID. If not on Frida, then ACGME's website.
Right. Yeah.
All the accredited programs, you can look at it over there. If you can't find it on anything, then I would try to like go to PubMed actually and
Right,
see if they have
yeah.
any publications wherein they were the first author or the corresponding author, and then take the
You would do it that way, right? Yeah.
So like how was your research experience? Do you have any when you applied?
I did. So my research was more like it was like review papers. I had around like 2 peer-reviewed articles which I published during med school.
Nice.
But it was more on like Alzheimer's disease because I initially wanted to do neurology when I just started. Then I think a few months into med school I was like, no, it's internal medicine. So yeah, when those neurology days, that's when I like wrote about Alzheimer's and stuff.
Nice.
So
How was your interview experience?
So interview again, like I literally got my first and only interview in like the second week of Feb.
Oh, wow, that was so
that
late.
was it. That was it. I'd like totally given up. I'm like, this is done. But then like one random day it just like came up and I was like, wow. And I was just like, okay, let's just, give it our best shot. And then it was nice. I felt like I didn't have as much pressure at that point because a part of me had totally given up on residency. I'm like, this is not gonna work out. But then I feel that sort of helped me be myself during the interview, and that actually helped because it removed all the
Nice.
stress.
Did you prepare for the interview? Did you practice for it, or were you asked any like funny questions during the interview?
Okay, so for me, it's like I prepared for it in September, like when Eras just opened up, and then after that, like towards December, Jan, I was just like, what's the point, right? Like I just let it be. And then on this day, I remember I'd like written answers down, like and bullet points for all the commonly asked questions. I was like, okay, let me just go over it. But then when I looked at that, like so much of my perspective had changed in the last few months. I was just like, this is not me anymore. So yeah, I just was just like, I'm just gonna speak what I want to speak. But stuff like strengths, weaknesses, and things like that, I tried to like see what I wanted to say. But yeah, but the interview was like very, very like, it was very like free flowing conversation. It didn't really feel like it was a high pressure thing or anything. People were like very approachable when I spoke with them. So
Usually, like I've realized that because also again like the I do think that my internal medicine interviews, the very first time I applied, were different from my surgery interviews, and
really,
or maybe personally because I did not care about the medicine interview.
maybe.
That I was like just cracking jokes and like just having a casual conversation
Yeah.
with people
Yeah.
for my medicine interviews.
Yeah.
But like obviously when it came down to my surgery interviews, I wouldn't say I was uptight about it, but
Uh-huh.
like again, I knew that I put more pressure on those, or
Of course,
those
yeah.
were more important for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But the other thing was that the interviews that I got for surgery prelims were from universities and academic institutions, whereas the interviews that I got for internal medicine were from like community programs.
I see.
So I do also think that there's a difference in like the way they approach
I see.
their interviews, simply because the applicant profile that they're probably looking for is also a little bit different.
Okay. Like in what terms?
So obviously like when a program is looking at university programs are usually more intense as opposed to community programs. University programs obviously put more stress on your research and your research background, research interests, and what your future goals would be.
Yeah, yeah.
Internal medicine, like especially community programs, a lot of community programs do not have fellowships, right? So they know that if this person is training at our institution, he's most likely going to a different institution if that person wants to pursue any sort of a fellowship.
Yeah.
So they know that and they understand that they do not offer that.
Yeah.
So for them, like the process becomes a little bit different, where like they are also a little bit more upfront about the things. Like, say for example, one place that I interviewed did not have like a so I'm interested in cardiac and I'm interested in vascular, so like that's true for both like medicine side of it
As well as
and
surgery.
as the surgical side of it. So when I was talking to like an interview, it was I forget. It was in Pennsylvania somewhere, but like they didn't have a cardiology fellowship, so they were upfront about it, and I was like, yeah, I understand. And again, also like I also didn't really care about them that much, so I was like, okay, like we'll see
Yeah.
what happens. But yeah, it is how the interviews are. But like
Right.
usually they are much more casual. They're
That's
not.
true. That's true.
They're not intense in the sense that they really just want to get to know you.
That's true.
they really want to just see that if we can have a conversation with you, if you're going to be a fun person to work
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
if you're going to be an ass or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
So usually like interviews are like that. Did you get any funny questions?
It wasn't like funny. A lot of it was like based on my experiences in China and stuff like that. And also, I'd like put a set of my paintings in the background. I knew that would like spark conversation. So then it was a lot about that stuff and what I do in my free time and stuff. And even YouTube came up. I feel like that was also something that they found interesting. So yeah, it was just all around that. So.
Did they ask you anything about COVID?
No, they did not. They did not.
That
They
would
did
have been a
not.
funny question.
You know, the coolest thing is that they never asked me, tell me about yourself. That was just not asked at all. Like, that's such a common question, right? Like, they never brought that up. It's really
Usually, I mean, like I've been asked that. I've been
I
asked,
know, it's like-
and again, like then I feel a lot of like interview questions, like the information that you present to them is how they take the interview further. Until unless they've been given like very specific set of questions to ask, like behavioral questions and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Until unless that is the situation, they would usually just go with the flow. And therefore, like I personally feel that tell me about yourself is a very nice questions
Yeah.
that way, because you can literally tell them the things that you
You
want
want, exactly.
and steer them in that direction, like
That's
all right,
true.
nudge them in that
Yeah,
direction, like
yeah.
ask me the next question about this.
Yeah. Mine literally started off with, I just reviewed your entire application, I know everything about you. And that's how it just started. It was crazy.
So you should have been like, all right, tell me about my experience.
It was like, what year did I graduate?
He's flipping papers.
Oh my god, yeah. It was pretty fun though. Yeah, it was a nice experience.
And then so you said your interview was in February. All right, so probably the rank order submission list was pretty close by.
Bro, people had already submitted their lists. I remember on Twitter everyone was like, oh, submitted my list, and this was all in the first week of Feb. And I got my interview in the second week of Feb, so I was just like, this is game over for me.
Oh.
Yeah, it's insane.
How was the feeling when you actually like found out that you matched?
It was honestly unbelievable. Like, my first instinct was, what if they sent me this email by mistake? I was like, this cannot be possible. Then I went to NRMP, I double checked, and I was like, okay, I'm reassured now. Yeah.
Hey, you didn't have to wait till Friday then.
I know. Everyone tells me that. It's like, you knew on Monday.
Yeah, you knew on Monday where you matched. And then obviously the whole process. Do you mind if I ask you what kind of a visa are you on?
J1.
J1.
Yeah.
All right. It's probably easier to get a J1 as opposed to an H1B.
That's true, yeah.
And as far as you've done 1 year of internal medicine already. So how's your experience been in internal medicine?
So it was honestly, when I just started, I knew nothing, like absolutely nothing. Like, because even my internship was online, so there's like very little clinical experience that I actually had. The actual clinical experience I had was like as a med student, taking history from patients. That was like the only experience I had. So when I started, like, at least in my hospital, you're just like assigned patients. We have like these buddy rounds just before residency.
Right.
It doesn't help as much as just like 4 or 5 days, but you just get to know like how things work. But then you learn only when you do it. So like
Yeah.
on day 1, you're just given your patients and you just have to handle stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, I was so overwhelmed. But then eventually I feel like I had good seniors who taught me really well, and people were like pretty approachable. So you just start learning. By like 2-3 weeks, you
You get the
understand
hang
what the
of
work.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you get the
understand the
hang of it.
workflow, and then things keep getting better. I feel like in the start, I remember I saw myself like asking my seniors every single thing, but then like after like 4-5 months, you started becoming like more independent. Like,
Right.
so it was good. It was a very good learning experience. Like, I know on a daily basis you may feel like you're not learning anything, but
Yeah.
then when you look back, you're like, I've grown so much. So, and now when I have my interns, I'm like, wow, I was there last year.
Is there is there a specific rotation that stands out, or is there a specific moment of your first year that stands out as either a good memory or a bad memory?
I feel like this was on nights when I think one of my patients developed shortness of breath. Like all of a sudden, the nurse just paged me. She was just like, "Your patient's short of breath," and then I knew like if this was me a few months ago, I would have freaked out. But then like I was calm. I went and I checked. I got vitals. I felt like he was tachycardic. Got an EKG. Found out he was an RBR. Pushed metoprolol, and situation was sorted. So I was just like, that made me feel like an actual doctor. Like one of the few moments where I'm like, wow, I'm an actual doctor. And obviously, I had my seniors. I ran it by them after I did my initial assessment, and then it was good. So I feel like that was one of the times that stand out, like during my first year.
Nice. Have you had a patient flatline on you, or have you had to call a rapid?
I have never had to call a rapid. Fortunately, it's always like rapid's called and then you end up going. But I've never had to call a rapid.
Well, lucky you.
But there was one patient who was actively dying, but that was like a comfort care patient. So there was not much. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One of my co-residents, like when we were very early on in residency, like it was a patient on the floor, and like she had to call a rapid, and like she was because we had just started residency,
Right.
so obviously like you don't want to make a mistake,
Of course. Yeah.
and calling a rapid is a huge thing. So like, but again, like the patient survived. So
You better be safe, right? Especially when
Yeah.
you're starting. You
Yeah.
always want to make sure. Yeah. It's wow. It's stressful.
as far as this entire experience has been concerned, for you, I feel like it has been slightly streamlined simply because the situation with COVID or anything. What was the hardest moment of your entire journey?
I feel waiting for interviews, definitely. That was it, because that was at one point where I was just like, what is the point of all the hard work if it's not getting the recognition and stuff? And I knew there were like, candidates who were probably like much better than me. And it is very competitive at the end
Yeah.
of the day. But yeah, I think at that point, it was like honestly one of my lowest points. And I was just like, I'm quitting medicine. This is not meant for me. But yeah, things somehow worked out. I feel like that was the hardest part for me, like waiting for interviews. And besides that, it was just like figuring the whole process out. I still feel like that was hard, but then at least I could take action to do something
Yeah.
about it. But waiting for interviews, you couldn't do much about it. I
Right.
think that's what puts you in a little helpless position, right?
Right, and that's what I said. Like that time period between September till
Yeah.
submission of the rank
Yeah.
order list, it's a long time,
It
first of all,
is.
and like if you're not doing anything or if you're not actively engaged in
Yeah.
something, then you're just overthinking.
For sure, yeah.
And when you're overthinking, your mind can wander anywhere that it wants to.
Yeah.
Have you taken step 3 already?
I did. I took it recently. I just took it like I think 3-4 months back.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How was your step 3 experience?
Step 3 was pretty, again, like it was way harder than step 2 and step 1 because you're doing it with residency.
Right.
So you're like working like 12, 13 hour shifts and then you're coming back and doing questions. It was like pretty hectic, but I feel like there's no better time to do it than first year because I didn't want to take it in second year. It would be even more hectic. So it's nice. And also CCS becomes much easier when you've done residency because it's just like you're
Placing
just
the
like
order.
placing orders. Yeah. So I think it's easier during residency, but I know like a lot of people from my residency class, they did step 3 before matching as well. So
Nice.
yeah.
As far as this entire process has been concerned, you're in your second year, you're going to be in your third year next year, and then very soon you're going to be finishing residency.
Yep.
So what do we expect from you at a personal level or at a professional level in the future?
Well, honestly, I don't know. I feel like if there's one thing COVID taught me, it's that you're gonna have a plan, but there's also gonna be stuff that's gonna change things. But at least for today, I do see myself working as a hospitalist. I really like how floors are, and I really like how you're taking care of multiple things, and it's really nice. Like it's one of my favorite blocks when I was in first year. So I do see myself working as a hospitalist. I want to get into medical education as well because that's something I'm very passionate about. I love teaching and mentoring people and stuff like that. And the third thing, of course, YouTube and social media. I feel like you can have such a huge impact on people through
Right.
social media, and I want to make time for that as well. And yeah, that's how I see for today at least.
Nice. I mean, like it's a good plan,
It is.
and we'll,
see.
and yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Uh, what would be your advice for people who, see this pathway or who want to follow you along this pathway? So, what would be your most important pieces of advice?
Okay. So what I would like to say is that everyone has like a very very unique experience, and to take every advice with a grain of salt. Like honestly, everyone like who advises you are they're not lying to you, but they're just telling you stuff from their experience,
Right.
and that may not
From their
fit into
perspective.
from their perspective, from what they went through. So it's not gonna be the same for you. So always take everything with a pinch of salt and see what fits best for you. So that's one thing I would say. The second thing I would say is like try to be organized, try to create like a rough timeline, and break it down into smaller parts so that you don't get too overwhelmed, because like there are so many steps and processes, so it's always better to do it like one at a time. I feel like in a way, since I didn't know there was so much ahead of this, I thought just step one, step two and you're sorted.
Right.
But that sort of helped me in a way because I was not too overwhelmed. At that time I discovered things on my way, so I was just like, okay, we'll deal with one thing at a time. So yeah, my advice would just be like take it one step at a time and try to be organized. I think those are the major ones.
Nice. Side question actually. Did you ever take FMGE?
I did not.
You did not.
I did not, because firstly, it never came down to that, but then I knew that if I didn't match, then I would probably have to take the FMG, because I was like, ultimate goal is to become a doctor, right? Like regardless
Yeah.
of wherever. But I think like even if I would have taken FMGE, I wouldn't be able to practice in India, because since I did my internship online, I think that was not recognized in
Yeah,
India.
yeah.
So it was like a whole complicated thing. So I didn't end up taking it. Did you though?
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did my
Okay.
internship back in India.
Oh, okay. So you took the exam and then you did your
Yeah.
internship. Okay.
So like in my head, like my decision to pursue USMLE came during my internship.
I see.
So when I was doing my internship, I was like, all right, I don't think I can
You can
work in this
yeah,
environment.
yeah.
And so yeah, like it was during internship that I realized that this is probably not the best environment to work in, and I guess that was also because of the exposure that I've had in China. Like during your 4th and 5th years,
Yeah.
you do go to the hospitals
Yeah,
and you do
yeah.
see some patients, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's being mediated by the
Right.
attending.
Yeah.
But all of that process, like comparing that, that experience in China
Yeah.
to what I had experience in India in a government hospital, I was like, all right, this is probably not the best way of learning.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so that's why, that's when I was like, all right, what are my options? And I had actually shortlisted Germany, UK, and then US.
Okay.
And it was one of my FMG teachers that I reached out to, and then he was like, all right, if you really want to, not be in India, then US is probably the best system that you should
Right.
go to,
Right.
and it's probably also the most difficult. So prove yourself and go there. So I was like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, it's been a very nice experience, and even right now, I would say like you gotta keep on doing what you gotta do.
True.
Well, thank you so much.
Of
Thank you so much
course.
for your time, and thank you so
Pleasure.
much for your insights and helping us understand where you came from.